Hello, this is Valerie Moore from the Frederian Gazette. Thank you for joining us this warm Wednesday evening as we reenact the controversial book, Say I Slew Them Not, written by Kingsley edited by Alexander Phillips, and narrated by Pepper Holloway. This program has been sponsored by Pierre's Hormone Starter Kit. Utilizing the most advanced science available, we've created a new formula that is 10 times more potent than generic hormones. Never has it been easier to control your own form. We now pass the mic to Pepper Holloway, who will be reading Episode 5, Prosecutor's Office Bombed! Kingsley's Trial Postponed for 3 weeks! July 8th, 1826, Berkassa, Hiva. No one today, except for the most dedicated of historians, remember the archive bombings, my first mission with the ILA. Why would they? So much blood has been spilt on Hivian streets, it's impossible to remember all the dead. At the time, however, it was the most, quote, horrid of horrors. A heinous crime only the most vile and ruthless of murderers could conceive of. I wonder how Hiva's best and brightest minds would have reacted to the truth that the attack was a reluctantly dreamt-up affair by Ikatel fed up with waiting for Hiva and the international community to grow a conscience. I was in our backyard struggling to fold a heavy cotton sheet for Katerina when Siegfried and Devin recruited me. My cousin simply asked in Itali if I wanted to do something for the cause before striding down the street as if he was powered by pistons. I threw the sheet into the basket and followed Devin, explaining that Heron had no luck with the Frederians, and Sandy had a pair of nosy tops he needed to teach a lesson. Nothing like catching 2 fish with 1 hook, he said, his smile not meeting his eyes. We strode down the glittering streets of downtown Berkassa, the muddy humidity plastering our clothes to our scales. Darkness slowly replaced the pink and purple hues in the sky, allowing the glass filters placed over the streetlights to produce the southern lights. Their ephemeral flames flickered across the Hivian houses and mosaic streets, offering to transport me somewhere mystical and safe for me and my kind. Alistair's deep chimes echoed behind us. 7 chimes. Laughing Hivians burst from their homes and ambled down the tentacled streets towards a cultured opera or a raunchy vaudeville show. The women wore colorful dresses with layered wide skirts and plunging necklines. Their hair was held in ridiculously elaborate buns, and tangles of beads hung from their necks, while the men wore brightly colored, perfectly tailored suits, top hats, and ornamental canes. Siegfried led us away from the chaos into the duller corner of town. Here the buildings took pride in their deteriorated state, Ikatel poking their heads out of windows to call for filthy and sneaky children before pulling in the laundry left out to dry. Cracks tore through the mosaic streets, and the smell of refuge wafted from bloody potholes. I spotted an occasional Indarium as well, their brown and black skin and brilliantly colored and patterned clothes adding a hint of light to the dreary surroundings. Siegfried stopped in front of a sloping sewer grate, took out a metal rod from his coat, and lifted the covering. "Youngest first," Devin told me, and Siegfried agreed. I scrunched my snout at the stench emanating from the dark mouth. "Come on, this is hardly the worst thing you'll do for the cause," said Siegfried, nudging me forward. I grabbed the handrails and scurried down, bringing my arm to my snout. I'll never forget that smell, the gangrenous odor coating my tongue with the taste of spoiled milk. "Amel," I muttered, stepping to the side as Siegfried followed me. The faint light that floated through the hole revealed a serpentine labyrinth of tunnels, the putrid water gurgling and frothing as it crept beside us, calling to me. This was the largest body of water I had ever been near, the Hivian police guarding Mary River as a jealous partner would their spouse, and I almost gave in to the temptation. Instead I pulled away and asked, "What the hell are we doing down here?" A heavy clank ran throughout the tunnels, smothering us in a curtain of darkness. Metal scraped against stone, then a hiss, and a teeny flame grew from within a lantern held by Siegfried. "We're going to avenge those who died on the 11th, said Siegfried, turning and holding the lantern out in front of him. "Truly?" I asked breathlessly, the honor of being involved in such an occasion almost overwhelming me. "Did you think I'd leave you out of our revenge?" Siegfried smiled, before leading us into the stifling abyss that was the city's stomach. Our going was long and obscene, my cousin occasionally muttering to himself, looking this way and that before continuing forward. I clung to the slimy walls with one hand, while I hung onto Devin with the other. Siegfried held the lantern high above his head, a faint glow swallowed by ink-like darkness. My vision, while adjusted enough to make out my friends' forms, flickered as the overwhelming stench of rotting flesh and rancid shit washed over me. Phantom figures appeared in the corner of my eyes, and a shiver rippled down my scales as I grew convinced we weren't alone. With a click, Sandy's familiar voice echoed around us. Varus almighty, Siegfried, do you want me to shoot ya? The older Ikatel emerged from the shadows while holstering his revolver. I'd rather have you on alert and slightly trigger-happy than asleep on the job, my cousin replied in Itali, patting an annoyed Sandy on the shoulder. I brought reinforcement. You gonna trust Tossier with explosives? Sandy scoffed as we followed him down a curvy platform until another pair of lights broke through the decaying darkness. It cast shadows on 3 figures, almost turning them into flat reflections found in a painting. Password! Adrid lives, said Siegfried. His lantern revealed a trembling Ernest, Zir's revolver raised but shaking. Siegfried gently pushed Zir's wrists down and took the weapon from Zir, whispering, It's all right. A key requirement to being a scout is the ability to aim properly, Sandy reprimanded, and Ernest's ears fell. Siegfried cut in before Asia could snap at her father. How's it going? The first block is primed and ready to go, said Asia as Gary handed her a rectangular bundle. Just adding the last bit here, and there'll be 2 blocks worth. Did you bring the timer? Here, said Siegfried, reaching into his pocket and handing the device to Asia. Timer? What exactly are we doing down here? I asked. Told you he's show, Asia said to Gary, punching his arm before accepting his pinta. Ever handled Dead Knight before, Kingsley? No. Do you have any useful experience? Gary asked, and Asia punched him harder. I've held a revolver, I said defensively, and Gary snorted. And how much experience did you have when you first joined, Gary? My cousin defended me. It's not the experience that matters, but the fervor. Gary's ears fell as Asia told me, You'll be fine. Just follow me and I'll show you where the rest needs to go. You too, Deb. Gary, fuck up the placement of the detonators and we're all dead. Understand? She took the lantern from the platform and led us around a bend into a small enclave as if this had once been a tunnel but had since been sealed off. Don't let Gary get to you, Devin told me. He takes being a rebel very serious. We all should, Asia corrected, carefully resting the lantern next to a box. But he doesn't have to be an ass about it. Now listen, we have 6 sticks of gelatinite here. Look up there. See where the line ends? I squinted and noticed a faint blob on the ceiling, connected to other blobs on the right but none on the left. These 6 need to connect to the line. You should end right at the crack. Take care to camouflage it, okay? We can't risk the fucking cops seeing it. Asia, what exactly is the plan here? Asked Devin. Didn't Sig tell you? Or he did and you weren't paying attention. I sort of tuned everything out after he mentioned explosives, he admitted sheepishly. And yeah? She asked, backhanding my shoulder. I shook my head and she laughed in despair. Someone drags you into the sewers without an explanation and you just go along with it. It's a miracle you lived this long. Asia, what's taking so long? Siegfried called. Someone didn't properly inform his reinforcement, she replied. Short version, because we're running out of time. One of Da's old business partners was arrested a few weeks ago. Frank's her name. She asked Dad to keep an eye on business while she's away. A few cops heard about what happened and think they can squeeze Dad and Frank for money and access to whatever she's smuggling. Dad invited them down here to take a look at the goods, and when they arrive, boom! How many are you planning to take out? I asked, looking up at the damp ceiling, the explosives blending in with the darkness. Well, only 2 or 3 will be coming down here, but if Siegfried's math is right, we're directly below the archives. There's an award ceremony going on, so plenty of cops will be hanging around. I think we can take out a dozen or so of the explosion. Amel, Asia, said Devin, adjusting his hat so he could study the ceiling. They killed 7 of ours, she reminded him, while shoving 3 bars of gelatinite into his arms. Don't drop them. We rose, and Asia gestured to the broken line, explaining how we needed to connect the gelatinite and then call her to check our work before we added the detonators. She patted our shoulders and rejoined the others just around the bend. I looked at a nervous Devin, and he shrugged. You have to do it, I prompted him in Hedian, because my Ikali was still rusty. I can't reach. Devin took an awkward step forward and stretched his lanky body as if to prove he was too short but achieved the opposite. Fuck the abyss! Mom had to give me her tall gene. Is she in Hiva? I asked, desperate for anything to take my mind away from the explosives in my hands and the lapping sewer water behind me. Nah, everyone else is in Further, grunted Devin, attaching the explosive to the ceiling. I'm the only one who heard the Maria teacher's cry and returned. There's 6 of us in total, though, so it's not like Mom will miss me if I attach these wires wrong. But that's meant to be a joke, right? He threw his hands in the air in the least comforting manner possible. A muted argument came from the bend, and Gary's sharp voice broke out. Don't tell me you're having second thoughts again, horn trader! A grunt and splash echoed around us, and Siegfried's voice followed. That was uncalled for. Poor Ernest, Devon sighed, and I cocked an eye ridge. He struggled with the wires before calling for Asia. It was terrifying how much she resembled her father when she was furious. Everything all right? Devon whispered in Itali, and she growled. Gary's just being an asshole. Lucky I only gave him a black eye. Dev, this is a mess! She untangled her wires and made him try again, this time under her watchful eyes. Is Ernest okay? He asked, while he didn't even attempt to follow her directions. I shouldn't have brought Zir down here. Z's not ready, she admitted. Z want to be. Although I'm surprised Siegfried got you down here, Dev. Well, when the cause calls, he shrugged, then cried out as Asia smacked his hand and corrected his work again. Although... Hey, Gary! How does God feel about explosives? Fuck you, Dev. Do you think he approves? Or will you have to go to confession tomorrow? You better not confess this, Siegfried's voice echoed. Of course I'm not. Go to the abyss, Dev. Oh, so lying to God's okay? Asked Asia with a satisfied smirk on her snout. Wait, is this lying or just a large omission? Devon added. Focus, you two, Siegfried warned. We don't have much time. I have to finish over there, she said, resting a hand on Devon's shoulder as he fiddled with the wires. But I'm sending Ernest your way, okay? A minute later, Ernest joined us with a nervous smile. You know what to do here? Because I'm just making shit up, said Devon, gesturing at the wires. Ernest hesitated before sighing yes and taking over. I suppose you can't date Asia without knowing how to plant a bomb. Devon teased Zir, and Z shushed him. Sandy still doesn't know. Devon brought his hand to his snout and lowered his head apologetically, but couldn't stop himself from hissing. Please found a priest to perform the ceremony, and Sandy still doesn't know? My eyes widened as Ernest twisted Zir's snout in embarrassment before studying the wires. Why embarrassed, Dev? You really tangled this up. Devon was about to reply when Ernest hushed him. Z stopped Zir work and looked over Zir's shoulder. I did the same, the faint light from the lantern unable to penetrate the darkness around us. I lifted my right ear and strained to catch the whispers above the rushing water as Ernest turned around completely and took a step forward. What is it? Devon whispered, Asia and Gary's voice echoing around us. I handed the gelatinite to Devon and brought the lantern to Ernest, who held up a hand. Nothing except for the drip, drip, drip of droplets and the gentle splashing of the sewer's water. Ernest's ears and nostrils twitched. There. That scent. Sweat. Human sweat, and a hint of alcohol. Cops. Ernest pulled back and silently gestured for us to follow Zir. What? Ernest hushed our three friends. Someone's coming, Z whispered. From the left. Siegfried pushed around us, nearly falling into the water as he investigated. Dev, leave those here, said Asia, fiddling with the timer. We should have enough detonators and explosives to make a dent. Gary, don't tell Dal. Are they early? I asked. Maybe, or this could be an unexpected patrol. We need to split up. Harder to find us all that way. I'll take Devon and Kingsley. Asia, take Ernest. Gary, go with Sandy. Follow the markers left behind by Frank. Once you get out, stay low for 3 days and we'll meet back at McGill's, okay? We all nodded and Siegfried tapped my shoulder. Leave the lantern. I grabbed Devon and we rounded the bend, the smell growing stronger. Siegfried led us around the enclave and to the right, down a narrow tunnel that required Siegfried and Dev to lower their heads in order to pass through. The stone platform turned into sloppy mud that threatened to pull us into a suffocating grave with each step. We had anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes before the timer went off, but no way of knowing how much time had passed as we shuffled down the filthy sewer tunnels. The weight of our impending doom pressed on my shoulders, and I frequently looked behind us, half convinced someone was following us. There was never anything there except for the sloshing water and flickering shadows. Had to be my mind playing tricks on me. So easy to lose one's way down in the sewers. I forced myself to look away. I knew nothing was there, and yet, always haunted. Always haunted. I crashed into Siegfried and Devon crashed into me, forcing my cousin to grab onto the wall before we tumbled into the filthy water. Devon swore and Siegfried hissed at him to shut up. Faint, indecipherable voices echoed. Human sweat mingled with the decaying smell of death. How many minutes had passed since Asia set the timer? Fuck it, Siegfried whispered, followed by rustling fabric. What are you doing? Devon hissed. We have to swim. Devon and I expressed our revulsion at the same time, Siegfried attempting to hold our snouts shut as water splashed and someone swore. They were close. Could be a few feet away, could just be around the bend. It was hard to tell the echo. We don't have much time left, and they can't follow us in the water, Siegfried said, finishing the argument by taking off his own shirt. Come on, don't you want to know what it feels like to swim? Yes, but not in my own shit, Devon snapped, then hushed himself. Shh. If you have any better ideas, I'm listening, Siegfried said, tossing his shoes. Oh, Shardif and his hounds, Devon moaned, and we both undressed. There was a splash. And a goddammit! And then the gentle lapping of something working its way across the water. How is it? I whispered as I dumped my shirt into the mud, vaguely aware it had been a gift from Katerina. It's fine, cold but fine, Siegfried replied. Ah, crap. You alright? Yeah, it's just crap. I made a face, and Devon whispered, Ready? No. I sighed as he stepped into the water, cursing the entire time. God damn it, there's no one down here, a voice echoed around us. The Hevians! I glanced behind me but saw nothing. Notice the captain isn't wading through shit with us, another echoed. Come on, Kingsley, Siegfried hissed. Without thinking, I closed my eyes and dove into the water, and rose to the surface, gasping in revulsion. All around us floated odd bits and ends that I didn't want to think about, let alone register as they brushed against my scales. Hear that? The Hevian's voice asked, followed by the sound of boots. We dropped into the water until we were submerged to our nostrils, slowly and gently paddling in place, counting on the Hevian's poor eyesight to miss us completely. A faint ticking echoed in the back of my mind as I expected the bomb to go off any minute now. This way, said the same fucking Hevian as he came into view. Siegfried found my hand in the water and filth and squeezed it as I held my breath. Another dark form joined the Hevian. I told you, you've been hearing us, he snapped. Ah, fuck this, come on, I heard the Ickies hide their best contraband in these tunnels. No, I heard something. My eyes widened as I realized our clothes were right there, an inch or two from the Hevian's boots. Siegfried must have made the same realization, for he squeezed my hand again and I felt a faint ripple of water. I inhaled sharply before we dove, my third eyelid sliding closed, and I followed Siegfried's murky form, trusting Devon was behind us. Despite the shit and decay that surrounded us, nothing felt more natural than zooming through the water. A familiar warmth, as if I had done this my entire life, ran through my veins as my fingers and toes slid through the cold water, playing with and being guided by its current. This was where I belonged. I even grew accustomed to the dirt that accumulated on my scales, telling myself it was just mud from the bottom of a river or lake. I could feel currents around me and wondered if it was Devon or Siegfried indulging in the childish desire to spin and twirl in the weightless water. Our nostrils breached the surface only a few times before we dove again, the current growing faster and stronger. I hoped that meant we were approaching the mouth of the sewer that would dump us into Mary's River, a completely different obstacle on our path to freedom. We could only assume the explosives would go off by the time we found a way out, and the police would be out in droves. That either meant the river would be less protected, or they would swarm the beaches like seagulls during a summer festival. We rose once more for breath, the roaring water drowning out all noise, and we realized this was the opening. Siegfried glanced at me and Devon as if to tell us to get a good breath now, for he didn't know when we'd be able to safely surface again. I filled my lungs with air until they hurt and dove, letting the current carry me. I couldn't see anything, water nothing more than furious foam that battered me this way and that. I was vaguely aware of going down before I tumbled feet over head around and around into gentler and cleaner water. It was odd, but I could smell the purity. Yes, the sewer smell remained, but it was tempered by a freshness that signaled we were surface dwellers once more. Siegfried helped me steady myself before assisting Devon, and he led us through the dark, murky water. Some of the shit and filth that had clumped onto our scales was washed away, replaced by real mud and debris. The current was strong, and while we weren't overpowered, we didn't have the strength to fight it for long. Swimming was instinctual, but it was in no way easy for us when we had not been in a body of water larger than a bathtub our entire lives. The water darkened, and we took a chance to surface underneath a bridge. We clung to the stone pillars, the water lapping around us. Hevian police nowhere to be seen, but their sirens and the bells of the fire brigades echoing faintly in the distance. "Where are we?" gasped Devon, wiping water and dirt from his face. "I don't know," Siegfried admitted, bobbing with the water. I lowered myself into the water until it reached my nostrils and dared to swim out far enough to read the name on the bridge, hoping that any Hevian who saw me would assume I was alone. "It's Perry's Bridge," I said once I was safe under the bridge again. "Katerina's house isn't far from here." "Can't go to Katerina's," Siegfried said. "We're completely naked," Devon added. "That's gonna be a problem no matter where we go," I snapped. "Katerina won't turn us in. Dad won't let her." "What if he tells Heron?" Siegfried hissed. "You don't think Heron hasn't already figured it out?" I said. Siegfried twisted his snout and glanced up and down the river. "I don't know how much farther I can go," Devon said. "And the further north we go, the deeper we end up in the Hevian neighborhoods." How far is Katerina's house from here? Asked Siegfried. 5-6 blocks, I said. If we keep to the alleys, we can do it. Just have to get to the alleys, Siegfried muttered. At least we'll make for an interesting headline if we're arrested, said Devon, and added, or killed. Fuck it. All right, said Siegfried. Kingsley, you lead the way once we reach the shore. The journey home was more embarrassing than dangerous, or at least that's how I remember it. We couldn't find any clothes between the shore and Katerina's house, and being naked in the cold air made me feel far more vulnerable than being naked in the water ever did. Still, we reached the house without incident, and we used the laundry I left to clothe ourselves. The moon bathed us in her light, but offered no hint as to the time. Lights sparkled in the windows, but that didn't mean much. Katerina was often up late, working on some art project, or my father was entertaining insomnia with a bottle of brandy he swore he had thrown out ages ago. My original plan was to sneak them both in through the kitchen and upstairs undetected by going through the servant's door, and then out the next morning after Katerina and my father went to work, but Devon ruined everything by knocking over every pan Katerina owned. Predictably, my father rushed inside. Unpredictably, he was dressed in his best suit and was joined by Katerina and several of her friends. Thankfully, Heron was nowhere to be found. My father grabbed me by the shoulders and demanded to know if I was okay. We played dumb and discovered that despite the police intrusion, the bomb had gone off as planned. It seemed that their general incompetence and lack of awareness that there was anything to find blind them to our carefully laid wires and detonators. After quick and awkward introductions and assurances that we were fine, we bathed and Siegfried and Devon struggled to fit into my borrowed clothing. We claimed we were too tired to entertain that night and crammed into my teeny bed. A decision I regretted when I woke up in the middle of the night with Devon's bony elbow lodged into my back. Throughout the night we heard the ringing bells of the fire brigade, the heavy trot of police horses, and a lone voice on a bullhorn declaring a 2200 curfew. You've just heard Prosecutor's Office Bombed, Kingsley's trial postponed for 3 weeks from Say I Slew Them Not by Kingsley Montevello. Tonight's episode was read by Pepper Holloway and was sponsored by Pierre's Hormone Starter Kit. Take control of your form today. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Frederian Gazette and go to our website www.thefrederiangazette.com for episode extras. Join us next Wednesday at 5 p.m. for episode 6. Prosecution experiences a flurry of death threats amidst an increasing number of reported demon sightings.